problem number 1. Here is our flower. So we're going to come to the next slide down here to fill the table. So looking at my design, I see there's one orange square. There's one red trapezoid. There's one yellow hexagon, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 green triangles. And there's 2 blue trapezoids. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 purple diamonds. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'll show you guys on Jamboard, but you can use paper or the block app, and I'll show you both ways. So imagine this is my paper. So first I'm going to do 2/100 times 1. And I'm just going to put all my work together to make my life a little easier. Actually, let me type this. Okay, so my first thing is 2/100 times 1. And I know that that's 2/100. You don't have to show your work for that because 1 times anything, we know. Okay, next one, 6/100 times 1. The next one is 14/100 times 1. And again, as I said, if it's times 1, you don't really have to show your work. Okay, so next one is 8/100 times 5. So this is where it gets a little tricky. So I'm going to come over here. I'll draw an arrow so you can tell where I'm working. And I'm going to use the moving decimal method. So I have 8/100 times 5. And I'm going to move that decimal, and I'll show that with an arrow, to the right 2 times. So now my problem has become 8 times 5. And I know that is 40. So that's 40 wholes, 5 times 8. Now I have to move the decimal back 2 times because I moved it that number of spaces out. So again, I'm using the moving decimal method. So that's the method I'm using here. You could also use the box method, or you could use blocks to figure it out. Either way. So my answer coming back here is 4/10 or 40/100. That decimal point is there where I moved it back 2 times. All right, next one is 2/100 times 2. And so again, I think I'll probably use the moving decimal method here. So let's come out here. We'll do 2/100 times 2. So I'll just move that decimal out 2 times, boop, boop. Oop, let me use a new color. And then I know 2 times 2 is 4. So now I have to move that decimal back 2 times. So decimal goes here. I put a 0 here to hold that place. And so my answer is 4/100. If it makes sense to you, you could also just write out a sentence saying 2/100 times 2 equals 4/100. That works for me. And then our last one is we have 2/100 times 6. So same deal. I'll come down here. 2/100 times 6 equals, and again, I'm going to use my moving decimal method. So I'll get my pen. I'll move that decimal over 2 times. I know 2 times 6 equals 12. And then I have to move that decimal back 2 times. So now the decimal is here. So my answer would be 12/100. Alrighty, so far so good. So now I would go back and I would write in all those answers here. And remember, this is a paper, so I would take a photo of the paper and put it up here when I'm finished, but I'm not quite finished yet. So once I write in all my answers, ooh, I switched those, didn't I? There we go. Now I have to add them all up. So I remember that when I add, my first thing I have to do, it's really important, is I have to make sure that all my decimals are lined up. So I'm gonna line up all my decimals. You might have to rewrite it if they're not lined up on your paper. And I have to add all these up to find how much the flour costs in total. So I add them up in my head. I see that this column is 18, this column is 7. I bring my decimal point down and I put a 0. So now I have my total cost of the flour because I added up the cost of each individual piece. So now if I was, writing on paper, I would insert a photo, I would put it right here, boom. And if you don't know how to insert a photo, if you don't remember, look down at the bottom on the tools page and it shows you the steps. Okay, so that is number 1. If you wanted to use blocks to multiply, because this is a pretty small number, I'll show you quickly how you could do that. So let's look at this one. So we have 8/100 times 5 equals something. So I would get out my blocks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then I would repeat these 5 more times. Oops, I don't know why those changed color. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oops, come back here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Bring down here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so now I have, is that 9? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh yeah, 1 extra. There we go. So now I have 8/100 5 times. And I'm going to look and see if I can make any tenths. So I see that I can put these all together. And these, oopsies, come on now. You behave. We can turn into a tenth. And I see that I can do that same thing again. This can turn into a tenth. And again, this can turn into a tenth. Oop, don't want those. And last one, these can turn into a tenth. So I can now say that this is equal to 4/10. So that's how I would do that if I was using the blocks. Again, either way is fine. Just make sure that you screenshot your work and put it on your test so that I can tell you didn't just make up these numbers or punch them into a calculator without really understanding what happened. Okay, there's number 1.